Let me share my screen. So I hope you can all see my screen. Eh?
Yes.
Okay, so today we want to look at deontology. Yesterday we looked at utilitarianism, and we had a good discussion after that, and I also gave you some hints on where it is especially applied in the business world and specifically in the field of ICT. When we ended the discussion, one of the things we say that it's not possible for one to say, I'm going to be utilitarian from beginning to end. No, it's a case-by-case basis that you approach each case with a different viewpoint, with a different perspective, and to know whether you're making a good decision or a bad decision, a right or wrong decision. So we want to look at deontology today, which is referred to as duty-oriented theory. We saw utilitarian is consequentialist. We determine an action, whether it's good or bad, depending on the consequences. And basically, it predetermines that you can determine the consequences. It presupposes that there is the ability to predict the consequences of one's actions. And we also saw that's not necessarily the case. It's not something that is quite easy. Then there's also the question of judgment, because it's also pleasure or happiness oriented, where we assume action A is going to lead to pleasure, while action B may lead to pain. And the judgment on who is it that makes that judgment, that question came in. So today we want to look at the duty-oriented theory. So deontology comes from a Greek word. The word deon comes from a Greek word meaning duty, something that is binding you to duty. So you are bound to do your duty. It actually emerges. It's also based very much on the evangelical approaches of ethics, where we say scripture is a revelation from God, and therefore it is our duty to be obedient to the scriptures, to be obedient to whatever the scriptures say. Be you Christian or non-Christian, whatever is seen as a revelation, you're duty bound. If it is coming from a being that is higher than you, you're duty bound to be obedient. This is where it emerges from. I'm not saying that's necessarily what it should be, but what I'm saying is that this is the situation. This is where it emerges from. Deontology states the framework for it, how it guides that an action is right if and only if it is in accordance with a moral rule or principle. A moral rule or principle. So we've had things, take an example of the 10 Commandments. If it says thou shalt not kill, then thou shalt not kill. Even if it means that this person I'm killing is about to kill me, or is about to kill my loved one. The rule says thou shalt not kill. However, the moral rules that we follow every day. For example, you got out of your home, if you got out of your house today and you drove to wherever you are, you keep left. That is a law in Uganda. You keep left. If you are bound to your cultural laws, let's say if you met someone today, and your culture demands that you kneel down to greet, you will kneel down. If your culture demands that you shake hands, you will shake hands, because it's a moral rule or principle that is within your culture. So this is the typical example. It is, and the action is right if and only if it is in accordance with a principle, with the moral principle or rule. Now, where do these moral rules come from? They could be given by God, that's one, scripture-based. It's a requirement by nature, or it is laid down for us with reason. With reason, we've come to that conclusion as a society, as a corporation, or whatever it is. By reason, we have concluded that this is the right, the moral thing to do. This is our duty, that this is what we must do. Take an example of most organizations. They will have, they are going to have certain codes of conduct. For example, you may have, if you work in a bank, the code of conduct is that you should be dressed in formal attire. Maybe for the gentleman, I don't know what you call those trousers, the formal trousers and shirt, maybe long sleeve with a tie. For the ladies, probably office wear, and even the footwear should be of a specific type. Even in banks, even when it comes to, let's say, Saturday, they have, you can't simply go as you wish. So that's already laid down, and you even if it's not forced on you, you automatically have to be obedient to it. If it is a law given by God, for example, thou shalt not kill, you will not kill. If it is a law given by God that you should pray, have a specific day in the week set aside for prayer. If you're Muslim, it's Friday. If you're seventh day, it will be Saturday. Other Christian denominations, it will be Sunday. On this side, on our side, here in Toro, we have a religion called, is it Bisaka or something like that? For them, they pray on any day which has two, like 12 second, 20-second, things like that. So that is given by their God. So then there's also what we call natural law, the natural law that is embedded in all of us, that we know this is the natural law, this is my duty. A very good example of natural law is procreation. And procreation happens between a man and a woman. It's duty bound. Even if someone says, me, I'm a woman in love with a fellow woman, there's no way you'll get the other woman pregnant. If a man says, I'm a man married to a fellow man, there's no way you can get the other man pregnant. So it would only be between a male and female, human persons, I mean, that can get, can procreate. That's a natural law. And nature is duty bound to do that. So basically, that is the framework of deontology. So this slide basically details what we are talking about. When it comes to reason, so take the example of the bank. The bank says we are a formal entity, so by reason, our staff members should be dressed formally. We can go further and put it even to culture, where culture reasons out behavior of children. For example, we say children must be obedient to their parents. children must be submissive to their parents, a child should be submissive to their teacher. It's by way of reason. And even though it may not directly point to God, it does actually point to God and the natural law. So the reason part, we have the theistic part, and then we have the secular part. Although it's not directly connected to God, it is actually connected to God. So you have something that is laid down to us by reason. We have what would say universal acceptance. There are things that we universally accept, and there are those which we universally reject. So this would be the framework by which deontology framework works. So deontology actually rejects consequences. You carry out the works, you carry out an act, whether the consequences are desirable or not. So for them, they're basically saying the ends do not justify the means. So whatever happens, you are duty bound. You are duty bound to carry out an act as long as it has been declared that this is the way to go, whether it is painful or not, whether it is pleasurable or not. For example, you are duty bound to be faithful to your spouse, even if another attractive person comes along. One might even say you're also duty bound to keep your promise to your spouse, whether your spouse is faithful or not. You're duty bound to tell the truth, even if it costs you your job. So it's when you look at deontology, it's basically doesn't matter what the benefits are, unlike utilitarianism, which looks at the cost-benefit analysis. Now, I'm sure by now you're already seeing areas of criticism, yeah, areas where deontology may not be applicable. So a deontologist will argue that the promise simply has to be kept regardless of what the consequences are, because it is right to keep a promise. Once you give your word, you must keep it. While the utilitarian will say, only keep your promise if the results are better. The results are better than anything else. So the father of deontology is Kantian, Immanuel Kant. He's the most influential philosopher of deontology. So here, unlike utilitarianism, which disregards motive, with regard to deontology, the motive is superior. That means carrying out your duty is superior. So the superiority of motive underlines the duty. So what we seek in deontology is to say that I wish to do good more than I desire the results. I wish to carry out this act perceived as good more than I desire the results. This is deontology. So the moral values are experienced by the individuals, and they are self-evident from logical clarity. So one of the things that deontology actually rules out is the effect of emotions. The person, the agent, the person carrying out the act is considered to focus primarily on rationality, on reason. So they disregard what they feel about something. They take human beings to be autonomous, that they are devoid of, they are not being influenced by anything else, by others. What will others think if I carry out this act? What do I feel about it? What are my emotions? And already you can already see that becomes already a challenge in our human nature. That kind of reasoning becomes a challenge. One of the underlying principles that deontology bases itself on is that it considers that every person has a moral right to be treated as free, as being a free being, that can clearly set out their reasoning. And equally, therefore, says, even so, I should therefore treat the other person in the same way. They have thought about something clearly, and I must also treat the other person the same way. Deontology basically says that you have a universality, a belief that all are treated, all are equal, all human beings are equal, and therefore have the same access to reason, and are therefore also duty bound. So one, you have a right, and because you have a right, you have a duty. Every right comes hand in hand with a duty. I gave you the example yesterday, the right to vote. Every human being has the right to vote. Therefore, if every human being has the right to vote, they therefore have the right, they therefore have the responsibility of actually voting, or the duty of voting. So that is a universal right that can be cut across every single human being on the face of the earth. And therefore, someone can go ahead and carry out this duty. BK, you have a question or comment?
Yes, Doctor. I just want to contribute on your current point. So,
Yes.
For example, the right to vote, it might also be having limitations, given that someone is supposed to be of a certain age. So if at all it's of a certain age, does that mean it is universal? Because, for example, a right to live is universal because it's cross-cutting, no matter the age, no matter the religion, no matter the nationality, it's universally accepted. So I just wanted to clarify on that. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, yeah, BK, thank you for bringing that. Of course, the right to vote comes with a condition of age, where you're 18 and you're believed to be of a certain reason. But still, it doesn't nullify someone's right, let's say according to gender, according to race, nationality, whatever it is. So thank you for that clarity on that point. But the point of universality is that I think every single human being believes that you should be of a certain age, reasonable age, that you can come in and vote. However, also you need to take note that in certain cases, utilitarianism also comes in and creeps in. In certain situations, certain societies, when a certain agenda wants to be put forward, you'll find certain rights are going to be made flexible. Take the example now in Europe, especially in Europe, on the subject of, first of all, things like euthanasia, transgenderism, which are first of all, highly controversial issues. And of course, they cause adverse effects. But it's now being ruled in certain European countries that even children should have the right to choose to die. via euthanasia. They should also be given the right to change their gender if they so wish. So you see now there, in certain situations, some of those conditions we put, what we expect to be covered as reason, they're actually being manipulated, or they are perceived by others. Let me not say manipulation, because that puts me in a judgment seat. They are also being used by some. Should I say, they are merging different ethical theories to produce new laws and new rights, in quotes, I would like to say. Now, according to Kant, that every human being acts according to their maxim, their reason, their purpose. Now, and they should be ready, and when they act in that way, they should be ready that others can also act in a very similar situation. So that's what they refer to as reversibility. What I'm expecting to do, I should also expect the other one to do it to me. If I'm willing for the other person to do it to me, then I should therefore go ahead and act on it, knowing that comfortably, if the other person asked me to do it, I would also do it. Now, there are several criticisms. Before I go to the criticism parts, what are your thoughts on deontology? Yes, Ogola.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. My argument really is around following safe practices, because maybe because the Bible says, because of God, because it is written maybe in a holy book. I think increasingly, maybe because of so much exposure, maybe because there's too much information out there, I think increasingly people are getting to question some of these say biblical practices. I think we've had it in Uganda. Some people say, making fun and saying that maybe if it was Paul's letter to the Corinthians, they say, no, that letter was for the Corinthians, not for us Ugandans. So, what I'm trying to say is, I think increasingly there are voices appraising, questioning some of these maybe biblical principles, because some of them either don't add up scientifically, and yet people are now, because of the so much information, want reason. Someone wants very clear justification. Now, the other one is maybe around the practice of where you submitted that some practices are followed because it's maybe the code of conduct, maybe in a profession. We're also seeing that I think it also deviates. You find there are people that will pay attention to the code of conduct and wash down the actual productivity of someone. For example, the example you gave on banking, distance, putting on well. But we are saying I can be dreadlocked and still come and perform my duties to the maximum. Right now, we are seeing a rebel lawyer, Semakade. He tells you he's breaking the code of well-kept hair and what have you, and he's still showing you that I can look the way I want, but still, deliver to the expectation of, say, my clients. So I think there are voices coming up to try to seeking reason for some of these doctrines.
Okay. Thank you, Gola. BK, you had something to say? No?
No,
Yes.
I think Ogola has highlighted part of it.
Okay. Thank you, BK. Any thoughts from others on especially what Ogola says? Where we have certain moral principles, but we see a deviation. Yes, Goreti, then back to Ogola.
Thank you, Doctor. In reaction to what Ogola said, there are some things that come down to personal conviction. Things like, yes, dress code. Organizations set up dress code for orderliness. Say you have a brand you're selling and you don't want it to be misconstrued in the midst of all the dreadlocks and short skirts and then pull downs and say whatever else, damaged jeans, skinny jeans. You don't want people to get distracted by all that, because currently there's been a notion of like you're giving an example, the Bible. Many people will tell you that God looks to the heart and not to the outside. But then he is the same God who also says, let them see the good works you do that they may praise the God you serve. So as much as your appearance does not exactly determine what is inside of you, it's very easy for me to be misled by your appearance to think that that is who you are even to the inside. I mean, at the end of the day, your outside is only a reflection of who you are inside, very often times. So as much as these ethical rules exist, it comes down to personal principles. Yes, the law fraternity has a particular dress code, but we have seen crooks of lawyers dressing up in that particular way and still misrepresenting the whole fraternity. There are people who will tell you a lawyer, and they have to be paid. But we have also seen lawyers who are actually who have integrity and are very honest people. So as much as we have these ethical principles, we also have to think about you as an individual. Broken people exist all over society, yes. But does it mean we all bow down to brokenness because, again, God looks to the heart and not the outside? Like Dr. said, you cannot argue ethics and remove God. At the end of the day, that innate testimony within you that tells you, no, don't slap your neighbor because you didn't want to be slapped. It's still the voice of God speaking to you, whether you admit it or not. I would say the ontology would be good, but then on the other hand, I'm looking at like issues of sexuality, and then we have the LGBTQ forcing itself on every family member in the name of we have a right. The universality of it all is what brings chaos to society. You cannot please everyone. We cannot all be matching insects in black, walking towards a particular direction. There's always going to be things we don't agree on. But I think at the core, we should look at, because it's human beings for which we are ethical values, we should also look at the intrinsic value of a human being. Like someone who is going to argue, like yesterday we were looking at utilitarianism. Someone who's going to argue abortion is going to tell you, I want to be free. It's my right to determine that this particular being growing inside of me doesn't take away my right to take alcohol as I please. But then the ontology will tell you if it's universally acceptable. And we have seen that over time, what is bad is becoming universally acceptable. So universally acceptable, as much as it becomes a basis of guiding people, should not be the only principle on which we stand to judge ethics. Because over time, morality has been twisted and turned around. So we cannot base on only universally acceptable to say that it is good because it's universally acceptable. America has accepted its moral decadence and it's forcing it on other people. Should we all accept it because to the American principle, they are the determinants of what is universally acceptable? Again, who determines what is universally acceptable? So it comes down to your intrinsic values as a human being. Don't force it on others, yes, but it doesn't stop you from guiding someone to go the right way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Goretti. Ogola, you had a point. I remember you had also raised a hand.
No.
Okay.
Just not put down my hand, sir.
Okay. Now I have a question. I think Ogola's viewpoint and Goretti's viewpoint raises a major question. Is ethics for only God-fearing individuals?
No, not really, because even though, like the Bible says, even those who do not know God are judged by their conscience. So even those, I have seen people like Candice Owens and other people arguing morality and protecting children, yet they're not Christians. It's not only for Christians.
Let's go to Lamek. Lamek, can you give us a
Yes.
point?
First, to answer the question, I don't think ethics is for only applies to only religious people, because ethics has different dimensions. For example, yesterday, what we talked about, I wanted to give one of the students say that ethics is just written on paper, and I wanted to give a very good example of what we have at our place. That being an NGO, which is multinational with different people, we are supposed to respect certain people in a way they are. And that does not mean whether you have to be a Christian or not, but there are certain things, for example, which are put in place. For example, we have the IT code, which says you should not share your password. That is ethical, according to the IT department. We have another code which says that you are supposed to have more. You are not supposed to install any other application on your computer without consulting IT. And which goes back to the question we had, one of the case studies that you gave us about Mary, who did not want to get a pirated copy. So that is also ethical. I submit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lamek. PK, you also had a point?
Yeah, I had doctor, but I think let me first withdraw it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so one of the things that we must understand, ethical behavior is not necessarily being Christian or believing in God. That is why also one of the most important things of why UMU as a university made a decision to include ethics in every single program. It's not about getting the Catholic faith and ramming it down people's throats, no, but to give each student that leaves UMU a framework by which they can make a decision and say, okay, I'll be comfortable. These frameworks, these different tools have been given, can indeed help me make a decision. I'll give you an example. There was, I remember in the last class I taught for science and technology, and at a certain point I asked a class, the participants, that can you give me ethical situations where you found yourself? And one gentleman told me a story that he had a colleague and said this lady had really been good to him and his family. They had become so close, and he said they were really close. They were really good friends. I mean, that she was beyond a colleague and friend. She had almost become like a family member. And being in the IT department, he discovered that she had carried out some fraudulent activities. Being in IT, he had found out in the system that she had actually carried out some fraudulent activities. And his moral duty, according to deontology, was he was supposed to report her. That was his moral duty. But he felt so bad because this lady had been so good. They had become very, very close. The family really had become like close family friends. So he said he couldn't bring himself to report her. So what did he do? He decided, let me not delete. Let me leave this information there for someone else to discover it and report Yeah, so he said, let me do that. Now you realize this was a moral situation, a moral dilemma, an ethical dilemma he faced. And if he had followed deontology, he would have gone ahead and reported her. If he had followed utilitarianism, so it gave him, but what he chose was, let me leave it, let somebody else do the reporting. So it's tools, basically tools. Francis, give me a minute, I'll come to you. It's basically what we're giving you is tools by which you can make a decision. Whatever your faith background or non-faith that you may have. So that is one of the key things we want to take away from this course unit. It's not about, because one, belief in God is belief in God it depends on a relationship. There's a relationship. You have a relationship, first of all, with your parents who may or may not give you a faith. You have a relationship with your faith tradition who may or may not give you. And then you have there's a relationship between you and God. But ethics in itself is just to give you the tools. And for example, one of the primary reasons I was one of the pioneer students of UMU, and I remember one of the things they pointed out why UMU as a university decided to do that. He said one was looking at the situation in Uganda, the level of corruption in Uganda. And they said, no, we want to produce professionals that can make the right decision. And that's one of the primary reasons why they said, let's teach ethics, so that we can produce professionals that can make the right decision for the good for themselves and for the good of others. So that's one primary thing. Francis, you had something to say?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I want you to help me understand, if a judge who is presiding over a case discovers that actually the convict or the person whom they are choosing is actually their relative. Now, in some situations, the judge is either excused or, so I just want to point to you that sometimes deontological principles, when you look at personal morals, they may supersede deontological values. I just wanted you to highlight there where you draw a line in such a scenario. You see,
now,
you are the judge,
but you find the person
because
now
yes.
Again, their professional codes of conduct come in. The professional code of conduct, and actually I think the legally what the judge should do is recuse himself or herself from the situation. So that judge would say, I recuse myself from making a judgment here because I am related to this person. Even professionally, I think I mentioned that I'm on the board of a local tea factory here. One of the things we do whenever we're going to have a meeting, a board meeting, is to state if you have a conflict of interest. If there's any situation where you realize there may be a conflict of interest, that person is asked to leave while the deliberations and the decision is being made. So that is essentially the professional thing that should be done. And those codes of conduct, those policies, those guidelines are there. So the judge should, in essence, do that. Because should it be discovered later on that, let's say, a judge was presided over this situation, and it was discovered later on, it was discovered that this judge was actually related to the accused person, that case can be overturned. It's very easy for that case to be overturned. So those professional codes of conduct come in. That's why we have them, to ensure that we have justice and fairness throughout.
But
Francis,
then, Doctor, that means that ethics are superseding rather, I mean, the ethics are superseding morals, because, I mean, the morals tell you do this, but the ethics tell you, please, you need to you need to go out because of conflict of interest.
Now, the ethics and morals are one and the same. They sometimes can be interchanged. Ethics and moral values, they are one and the same. Yeah, that is one thing we must understand. I don't know if I've been using them interchangeably.
Yeah, you are interchangeably using them.
Yeah, my ethical values are also my moral values, and my ethical values are not. I can't say they are deontological. If I was now to speak, let's say as an individual, let me just give you an example. Let us say we are making a decision on when we should have our lecture. What should be the right decision on when we should have our lecture? We shall get I will ask for the majority. If the situation warrants, I'll ask for the majority. What time should we start our lecture? I'll ask the majority. And the majority, if the majority says let's start at 9, we shall start at 9. But let us say I get an important call at 9 a.m. Then the time has to change. If me, the lecturer, I am unavailable at that time, the time automatically has to change. I may have to extend it to another date. Or let us say I have a hospital appointment. Because it's the lecturer, the time automatically has to change. But let us say it is one person. Let's say Alvin. Alvin has a hospital appointment. Because he's a student, his time cannot dictate others. So it becomes the ethical, the moral right action to do is to stick with what the majority say is okay. But let us come to another scenario. Let us say I am marking students. I have a marking guide. I follow the mark. To be fair and just to everyone, I follow the marking guide. Yeah, I will follow the marking guide to be fair and just to everyone. Now, for instance, I've given you all a time to submit. I should follow that marking guide. But then a situation comes in where a student sends in a request and says, you see, Dr. Sheba, I was not well, or my child was not well at this time. I kindly request that you allow me to submit. By virtue, my virtues, when I come to the ethical theory of virtue, I must have compassion and say, no, this person had an issue at that time. So what happens is, you see, my moral values are changing. The decision to make, I'm using a different theoretical framework to allow me make a decision at each different time. I don't know if I'm making I'm being clear, Francis.
Yeah, you're making sense.
Okay. BK, I think BK had raised their hand. Yes, Francis.
Doctor, I have a small question.
Yes, Francis.
I wanted you to help me place democracy versus utilitarian and deontology. Where do you place democracy in the subject to these two theories? Democracy.
Democracy. I would say
Yes.
democracy leans very much towards utilitarianism. What the majority perceive as good. I think democracy very much lies in that line of thinking.
And socialism?
Socialism, I need to understand socialism a little bit better, be able to answer your question there. Let me understand it a bit better. BK, you had something? Francis, I'll come back to you later, maybe next time, once I've understood it a little bit better. BK, you had something
Yes,
to...
yes, doctor. What I was saying is that if the fact that this mode is about ethics, science and ethics. No, sorry, ethics, science. If it stays here, then everything would be in sync. The only issue is that if we involve, for example, religious leaders and the conversation spans from science and then it goes broader, you realize that religious leaders in the country and world over are unethical, and most of them lack integrity. So for me, I have tuned my mind to having this module and just think within and not have to think outside, because you realize that technology, if you're going to deal with technology and science, yes, ethics is a must. Like, even if you're going to do in cybersecurity and then you're doing hacking, it has to be ethical and it's allowed, but not just doing things. So that's my submission.
Okay, thank you, BK. I'm seeing, let me check for the comments. There are quite a number of comments. Ethics is equals to moral and values. Democracy is about numbers. America has to accept what I believe is not indoctrinating their culture on me because they think it is right. Okay. But one thing I would like to say in defense of the United States of America, you need to understand the policies and the policies that are spun out of the US depend very much, extremely, on the administrative power, the government in power at the time. It heavily depends on the government in time. If it is the Democratic Party, then you expect very much liberal, the liberal agenda to be coming out. If it is what's the other party? Is it the Republicans, conservative Republicans? Yeah, if it is the Republicans, you expect very much the conservative.
The conservatives stop leading long.
The conservative or the Republicans. It's the Republicans. If it's the Republicans, you expect very much a conservative voice to come out of government. So it very much depends. It's not America per se. It is the ruling party at the time, the party that is in government at the time. So in defense of the US, I remember I saw a TikTok video from an American woman who said that why is the US government forcing African nations to accept homosexuality, yet we Americans ourselves have not yet accepted it? So it very much depends on that is in defense of of America in general. That I would like to point out. And yeah, I think those are some of the basic things I want to point out. Now, something in BK's statement has tickled my point and has tickled something in me that I want to put forward. In terms now, if we want to bring now ethics down to science and technology, do you remember the discussion we had in the introduction when we defined science, we defined technology, and then we defined ethics? And one of the things we stated, when you look at the definition of science and technology, they tend to keep them as something neutral, that is pure. They are not touched by anything else. And therefore, ethics may not necessarily come in. Now, let's discuss artificial intelligence. When you look at deontology almost makes it seem like the human being is rational, which is true, but devoid of intuition, devoid of emotion, and therefore can make a duty-bound decision without fail, which by in itself is not the case. Now, let's bring in artificial intelligence. We have now AI. AI is now among us. Can we comfortably apply deontology? And we know we shall have a morally right decision being made every time by AI. Any thoughts?
I've not gotten your question clearly.
Okay, we now have artificial intelligence amongst us. Yeah. It is a typical ICT innovation. And we now have AI even being used. It's now even being used to counsel people who are suicidal online. Meaning it's giving guidelines to people. And I even saw a snapshot. I remember someone had a snapshot of it on their status, where AI was advising someone that it seems you're depressed, it would be best that you kill yourself. Okay? So now, we have an ethical dilemma. Because deontology, by its mere framework, says we can even use reason. And AI here used reason. It used its reasoning very well. Somebody gave it information, and according to AI, the direction was it would be best that you kill yourself. By basis of pure reason. Yes, Goretti.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, for AI, sorry guys, for AI, it depends, I would say, because it's built to learn from the everyday life, like a child. It depends on which environment it's set in. Also, it depends on the programmer, I would say, because in such a case, it only responds to the environment in which it's put, right? Now, reasoning that someone is depressed and they should kill themselves, it eradicates the moral aspect of it, putting aside the intrinsic value of a human being, that life should not be done away with by the hand of man, right? So that means IT is some IT, okay, by creating AI, we are antagonizing ethical values such as, let's say, would be morality, the moral debates, because AI can't have moral debates. It specifically depends on reason. Now, if it adds the 1 + 1 and it doesn't add up, it will tell you your value is wrong. And it's not always as clear as white and black. And if for AI it doesn't add up, it's going to throw the case out. Like in this case where I told someone to go and commit suicide, the actual thing to have done is to probably advise that person on how to get rid of the depression.
Okay, thank you, Goretti. Dennis and Geoffrey.
Thank you, Doctor. From here, I think AI reason is based on the available data, so which I think can be applied to both of the frameworks, based on which data is available. Because if it is programmed using Trism, it means its decision to make decision based on that data. If it has both, then may make decision based on that data that is available. Submit.
Thank you, Dennis. Geoffrey?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Still on AI, Doctor, I have an example. For example, at the airport, we are using these systems which have artificial intelligence. They scan people, those who are entering at the airport, those who are moving out. Whether you are putting on heavy jackets, this system will scan you, and it may not even see the jackets you are putting on, but seeing the whole body, even inside you, what is inside your stomach. So, Doctor, I would like to know where that one falls. And still, you wanted to pose a question, Doctor, to you. Assume, yeah, you did IT, but you are a nun, and maybe you have gotten such an opportunity of working with those guys at the airport, maybe working with the cameras, scanning people who are entering. Ethically, do you think that one is good? And would you take up such a job? I submit, Doctor.
Thank you, Geoffrey. I'll come to Geoffrey later. Let's hear Francis. Francis?
Thank you, Doctor. I think when it comes to artificial intelligence, the information which you feel the AI algorithm determines the output, because AI cannot listen to your emotions. It cannot determine your non-verbal communication, neither your feelings. So I think it boils down to the framework that is being used, and it should also be applied on a case-by-case basis depending on the situation. Because if the AI algorithm determine that we feel you're depressed, it is better you kill yourself. I mean, has all the information needed been provided to AI so that a better decision is made? So we need to be cautious while we're using AI so that we can arrive at a better decision. I submit.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Now, I think I would first go back to what is AI? What is, okay, there are definitions of AI, but what is the thinking behind AI? Correct me if I'm wrong, there are some who may know it a bit better than me, but I believe AI is trying to imitate something about human beings. It's an imitation of a distinct future about human beings. They are not human beings, but they are imitating something distinct about human beings. What is that? Our ability to learn. We human beings, everything that we do, we learn. For example, we learn how to see. We learn how to hear. We learn how to breathe. The minute you are conceived, the first thing you learn to do is to hear, to listen. A child in the womb gets to hear the mother's voice, gets to know, right now my mother is scared, the heartbeat is high. My mother is happy at this point. This is her sound, this is her smell. When you come out, you learn to breathe. That's why a baby cries first, when they come out of the womb, because they're learning how to breathe. Then they learn to see. I was told a story of a man who was born blind. Then as an adult, there was a groundbreaking operation which allowed him to see. And immediately after some time, he requested the doctors to take him back, to make him blind again. Why? Because he couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Which brings us to the point that the minute we are born, the minute we start to see, I believe a child after 2 weeks or something, you learn how to see. So we take time to pick an image, for our brain to take that image, to make sense, make meaning out of it, and then begin to react to it, to what we are seeing. A child begins to react to the mother, then later on understands the father, maybe the siblings, other members in the household, gets to know who they are, and the role of each person in the household. So that is, I think, a great gift as a believer in God, a great gift that God gave us. And we begin to make use of them, make use of these things as we grow, as we become useful members of society. Now, AI, on the other hand, is imitating something, a future of human beings, a specific future of human beings. And it is meant to provide some kind of support. Now, the situation becomes problematic when this AI is making suggestions to a user. Let me put it in quotes, a user. It's making suggestions to a user which may or may not be good in themselves, which may or may not be good. Because what AI is doing, we are giving it a lot of information, and this information is supposed to, AI is essentially teaching ICT or a device or a program to learn. That's what we are doing. We are teaching it to learn. Now, of course, it's only going to get X amount of information, unlike a human being who is growing up in the natural environment with parents, with siblings, with peers, with, whatever it is, whatever environment. Even if you're a street child who hasn't grown up with parents, still you have some kind of peers around you who are guiding you. AI is, however, receiving only X amount of information, which X amount of information is controlled, or rather limited by whoever it is that is providing that information. Very limited. So therefore, it begs the question of the autonomy that deontology pulls out. And also the narrow thinking that technology is neutral. No, the technology can't be neutral because a human being is feeding this AI, this information. A human being who is limited, severely limited. So that is where I think, especially people who may be giving warnings over AI, as they are saying, we probably need to first stop and rethink, for what purpose are we putting AI there for? What is its purpose? Are there some ethical considerations we must think about? So with that, I was thinking, I want to leave you with an article rather than go through the next slides. I want to leave you with an article. I'm going to put it up on Moodle, which is talking about specifically deontology and what we're now seeing in AI, in ICT, in the field of ICT. Then from there, I was thinking, either based on that, I give you the assignment, or we wait until we look at virtue as an ethical theory. Then I give you an assignment. What are your thoughts? I think I give you all three, then I give you the assignment. But this particular article, I want to give it to you. Then let's have probably maybe we have a discussion on discussion forum, and we see, so we can have a more detailed discussion on this. Francis, you have a comment or question?
No, I'm just requesting you give us these slides so that we can read through them.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
These are going up on Moodle.
Okay.
Yes. Plus also there's also that article that I want to share with you. Yes, Twinom Gisha.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. So on the part of the discussion that you want to put, I believe till now some people still haven't understood how to use that discussion page. Because of late I've been getting notifications saying someone has been creating a new discussion. So instead of people putting their thoughts on your discussion, they've been creating their own. So I think we need to first show people how to post their views properly. Then we can go ahead and create another discussion.
Okay, let's do that now. Let's stop sharing.
Doctor was not answered. Jeff.
Yes, please. Oh, Geoffrey, what? Oh, yes, Geoffrey. Geoffrey asked the question that you have systems that can scan, even no matter what it is that is covering the person. Okay. One, your question to me was, let us say you are a nun. Now, my first question to you is, do you think nuns are the only people who are supposed to be ethical? That's the first question I want to ask you. No, I think all of us, every single human being, whether you are a religious, let us say you are a pastor, you are a reverend, you are a priest, a nun, whatever it is, the point of bringing ethics into the professional world is that it's a necessity for each one of us to make a right and correct decision in our different professions. It is correct and just and right and fair because we are social beings and our decisions, our actions affect all of us. Now, the first question is, why was that technology implemented at the airport? What was the reason for it? And I think the primary reason is that borders are used, be it international border, be it borders, let's say at the airport, or physical borders, let's say at borders at Malaba, this side, we have the Congo side. We have borders, and someone may try to sneak something illegal into your country. Now, every single country in the world has a right to protect its borders. It has a right to protect its citizens. It has a right to protect its society. And I believe the reason why those things were put was to prevent anything illegal coming into the country that may be harmful to the citizens of that country. It has a right. So that's the reason for putting up that scanner. That's the primary reason for putting up that scanner. Now, what happens is that automatically when you put up that scanner, you are automatically infringing on the privacy of whoever it is that you're scanning. You're automatically infringing on that right. But what's the primary reason? To protect the many. So their utilitarianism automatically trumps. And any person who is using the airport automatically knows why that thing is being put there. And if I don't want that right of mine to be infringed, then I shouldn't use the airport. That is, for me, now my thinking as Sheba. Yeah, this is now my thinking as an individual. If I don't want to be scanned, then I shouldn't use the airport. If that scanner is not going to affect me, if I'm not, let's say, trafficking drugs, it doesn't affect me. And it will not affect me unless really it has an effect. There was a time, I think I had a story, and this story was told to us by, I think, a nun. At every single airport, there are checks. They will check you to ensure that you're not bringing anything counterfeit. But even that checking must not must not cause any harm. So this nun actually told us a story of a gentleman. This was an American man who was being checked at the Amsterdam airport, Schiphol airport in the Netherlands. And this gentleman, when he was being checked physically, he was telling the people checking him that please be careful as you check me. I am not okay. But these security guards became so rough that when he was trying to explain that he was not okay, but they were not listening carefully for him even actually to state what was the problem with him. So they became so rough. This man was actually connected to a catheter. So they were so rough that they pulled the catheter. And of course, we all know what a catheter is. It meant that now waste began pouring out of him. And of course, this was embarrassing for the man. He kept saying, now, look, you've embarrassed me. Look at what you've done. You've embarrassed. He didn't mind being checked. It was how rough they were. So whatever the case, checking has to be done at an international airport. That is a fact. It has to be done. So that one can't be done away with. Ogola, you have a comment or question?
Just briefly, Doctor, maybe to just add on that, still goes back to the professional ethics you mentioned, because you'll find that even for you to be employed in such a station, you are signing some kind of a non-disclosure agreement in that whichever information you maybe get to see, you are maybe not supposed to divulge outside. It should remain within the confines of its purpose.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. And let me also give you just another, Geoffrey, let me also give you another example. We are in a learning institution. At the end of a semester or at the end of a module, students are supposed to be examined. Now, imagine those who are examined in a physical setting. You get into the physical class, you're going to sit your exam. One of the things that must be done is you're supposed to be checked as you enter the examination room. Why? To prevent cheating. Not so. They may even decide to put cameras to watch over you as you write your exam. So one, there's checking where they may physically check you. If things got so bad, the university may even decide, let's put these students through a scanner to ensure that they don't enter with anything illegal. And that in itself is already, even by physically checking you, that's invading your privacy. By putting a camera on you, that's invading your privacy. But primarily, all is intended to ensure that there's no malpractice that goes on as one sits their exam. So whatever the case, some kind of right has to be, if it's for the greater good, there utilitarianism comes in. I hope I've answered your question, Geoffrey. And imagine in a university setting, there are nuns who are teachers, there are nuns who are part of administration and religious people. Imagine the registrar for UMU is a priest, and he may be the very person to endorse that put scanners to prevent anything happening. I don't know, Geoffrey, if I've answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any other comment or question? Let me go to the chat room and see. Okay, if we have none, I would suggest that we close off the lecture here. I'm going to put up everything on Moodle. Emma, today I promise, today afternoon, I'll send you the recordings for yesterday, for the other Friday, yesterday, and
okay, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for this time. Oh, we were supposed to have a look at how to use the discussion forum. Let me just give me a minute as I log in. Okay, let me share screen. So, one, I put up a discussion forum. So the point is someone is supposed to reply. Somebody is supposed to reply to that comment. Now, maybe my next discussion forum, what I'm going to do is create one which requires you make a response as you and not to somebody else's comment. Maybe that is the one thing I will do different. But from what I see here, individual comments came in. So that should be fine. But essentially what you need to do is to reply to me as the one who set up the question, respond to it.
I think that is very clear now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can stay the same way as long as we've actually understood that we are supposed to reply.
Okay, okay. Goretti, you have a question or comment?
Not a question. I remind that someone had a question in the chat, but it hasn't addressed. Recent was asking, Doctor, do you think UMU has had an impact on ethics, especially in the area of corruption?
Especially in the area of
corruption. Considering it has embedded ethics in all its programs.
Okay. Now, thank you, Goretti, for that question. I think I would say yes or no. It would be a yes and no answer. One, one time somebody gave an example that you'll teach ethics and then you'll teach a student will come out with 100%, but that person cheated in the ethics class. So you may go through the course, pass, but ultimately on whether you make a right decision or not at your workplace, it comes down to the individual. It simply comes down to the individual. So it's a yes and no. There are, how can I put it? I would go, maybe I would respond now to a comment BK made where he said he doesn't want to listen to religious leaders because they're the most unethical. Now, I think I would answer that in two ways. There was a time my niece and nephew, they go to a boarding school, a primary boarding school here, which is run by the Holy Cross Sisters. So one time they came home and they made a comment that one of their teachers said that all priests, that there are no good priests anymore. All priests are only concerned about making money. So, one, I felt this was a scandalous statement to make to young children because you're giving them a crisis of faith. So I told them that I said to say that is very wrong because yes, there may be priests who are concerned. There may be an individual priest or priests who are concerned with making their own money, but I also know there are also faithful priests who every day, for example, every day I wake up, I go for mass. There's a priest there to celebrate mass. He has given up his sleep to come and celebrate mass. There's a priest every time I want to go for confession. There are priests available to hear my confession. I think that a small act in itself indicates a faithfulness. So I said, one, don't listen to such things because you don't know what every single priest is doing. That is one. Two, that also then goes back to BK's comment about there are many religious people who are unethical. There are those you have seen, but as a human being, you haven't seen everyone. You haven't seen every single person. That goes back now to the question in the chat room. Vincent's question. Would you say now there may be many people who are unethical, but then there are those who are ethical and you don't necessarily see them. You don't see their actions. You don't see what impact a certain lecture had on an individual or that it may have later on. One of the things we must understand is the mystery of life. I had this statement, that word twice. One, it was from a colleague of mine, a friend and a colleague of mine. Her father died at Umu. He died in those who know the Unkozi area. Unkozi, the flats of Umu. So we were in the flats. We had a colleague who was nursing her father, her sick father, and he died at the flats. And I remember she told us that the last thing he said to her was, "Life is a mystery." And this statement was repeated by a priest. One of the things we don't give up on is human beings. Something you've been taught today, you may discard it. You may say, "I'm not going to use it." But 10 years from now, remember some lecturer taught you, and it will have an impact on. Ogola, you're saying something? Sorry.
No,
guys.
doctor.
Okay. So that whatever was said to you may make an impact, may cause you to have a change of heart somewhere along the way. So as much as the situation may not be necessarily clear at a certain point, you may think, "Oh, Umu is teaching ethics, but does that make Umu students ethical?" Again, it's a yes and no answer. For one person, it may have an immediate effect. For another person, it may not have any effect at all. A person may say, "I'm choosing not to make a good decision based on ABCD. I'm choosing to make decisions maybe completely based on my pleasure." Another person will say, "I'm choosing to follow this rule, whether it is right or wrong." And then another person will say, "Me, ethics, I don't want to know." But like we say, life is a mystery. You never know at a certain point when something you taught may actually have an impact later on an individual. Great, that's how I would answer it. And Vincent, I don't know if I answer your question.
Thank you so much, Dr. I think Vincent has heard.
I think, Vincent, I hope I've answered your question. I think it often goes back to the question, I think when I raised the issue that UCU is very much adamant about the issues of biblical principles. Basically, for UCU, it's biblical principles. For UCU, I remember I was told the story that for UCU, if you're a lecturer and you want to go and teach, and you're in a cohabiting situation, if they want to give you the job, they will even tell you, do you want us to first give you time, you first get married? You know, something like that. And we know, of course, there are people, there are definitely those who rebel against what they teach, what UCU is trying to bring forward. But however, it doesn't stop them from, it shouldn't discourage them from pushing it forward, because what they are putting forward is right, just, and true. And it's good to push it forward. At a certain point, someone will get up and understand what they're trying to teach. There was a story I remember I had of a female student in rebellion. She decided to, I think, post images, indecent images of herself rebelliously against what UCU was trying to teach them. But I think primarily it's because whoever does rebel may not understand the goodness of what it is they're trying to teach, but they still continue. And also UMU continues to teach ethics, to guide people to make good decisions that will benefit not only themselves but others in the process. I hope I've answered many questions. I think there's a chat going on, but it's basically making it's at the expense of Emma Kasozi. So let's leave it at that. So do we have any other comment or question? If not, we can. BK, you had a comment or question?
No, I will hold that, Doctor. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, then I think then we have a good weekend. I'll make sure to post all the materials before today, end of today or tomorrow morning, or rather afternoon, because I'll have mass in the morning.
Thank you, Doctor.